Now, Kenya's President William Ruto has proposed the setting up of financial infrastructure that will allow all African countries to trade in their own currencies instead of having to use a third one, the US dollar, or in some cases, the euro. He made those comments while speaking during the Africa Private Sector Dialogue on the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area, and the third Kenya International Investment Conference in Nairobi. The Kenyan president said banks ought to develop mechanisms to prevent short-term revenue losses, especially as trade between countries on the continent starts to go up. He says East African countries have started discussions to assess the possibility of developing a regional airline to ease travel and other trade logistics.
I am, however, delighted to note that Afreximbank, in its mandate to facilitate intra-Africa and extra-Africa trade, embarked on building a centralized payment and settlement system to support trade under the ACFTA. It is called the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System. Banks and payment providers can plug directly to it to enable secure and instant payment in local currency. The system is designed to reduce or eliminate the challenges of cross-border payments and by so doing, accelerate intra-Africa trade.
The AfCFTA has corrected a long-standing anomaly, and that is that when West Africa trades with East Africa, or North Africa trades with Southern Africa, before the entry into force of the AfCFTA, we were trading on the basis of the so-called MFN rules. In other words, there was no preferential treatment of Africans trading amongst ourselves. Therefore, the AfCFTA is an opportunity for us to correct this anomaly, to accelerate and boost intra-Africa trade, to create opportunities for investment, for jobs, innovation on our continent.
Africa is one of the tools that will help to realize many projects in our Agenda 2063. I have chosen this time to say this is time to put end to fratricide wars in Sudan that is coming to add into the list of the conflicts we know in Africa, in Sahel region, in Chad Basin, in Libya, in Somalia, in the Great Lake region. Trade and peace are very well connected, intertwined in fact. And so I congratulate and thank the efforts of the Minister of Health for solving every matters in line with this free area trades, in particular that of the origins of goods.
All right, and let's dig a little deeper into the ideas that are coming out of that particular forum. Anthony Mveyange is a development economist and a public policy expert. He's joining us now from the Kenyan capital for more analysis on the comments that we heard a little earlier today. So, Anthony, good to see you on the program. How seriously, though, should we take all these comments, you know, talking about we want to bypass the dollar, we want to avoid trading in third currencies, but from a structural perspective, a lot of our trade is with third parties out there who will not necessarily take our rands, our Tanzanian shillings or our naira.
Well, I think it's about time. I think we should take this call very seriously. For many years, Africa has been relegated to the peripheral. And maybe I should articulate a few reasons why we should take this call seriously. The classic narrative out there is that Africa trades more with the rest of the world than with itself. For example, statistics show that 15.2% of trade that is happening, intra-African trade, as part of the trade that is happening in Africa, is very small relative to what is happening, for example, in America, over 50%, in Asia and Europe, over 60%. So if we really want to improve intra-African trade, we really have to really take this call very seriously.
But is the problem really the lack that, you know, say, for example, to use an example that the president used in his speech today, there was a shipment of tea that left from Kenya, was supposed to go to Ghana, and to quote the president here, it took 3 months to get to where it needed to go. So isn't the bigger problem here logistics rather than the currency?
Well, it's a combination, it's a multiplicity of issues, Rama, to be fair. It's a multiplicity of issues. Currency is one of them. Of course, trade facilitation, logistics that we're talking about could also be one of these reasons. Non-tariff barriers, rules of origin restrictions can also be the reasons to this. And I think this is why I'm saying we really need to take this call very seriously, because if we don't address these impediments to trade, they can really make it difficult for African traders, especially MSMEs, women, young traders, to really take advantage of the African continental free trade area.
All right then, but this also does boil down to a question of trust to some extent, right? Because within regional economic communities, ECOWAS, for example, if you have the CFA franc, doesn't matter which country you're in, you're going to be trading okay. Within the EAC, if I'm going to try and settle a trade between the Kenyan shilling, the Tanzanian shilling, that's straightforward. But in many cases, when it comes to trading across these regional economic communities, there's a lack of trust in those currencies. I don't know any Kenyan farmer, for example, who accepts to be paid in Naira, right? Because simply we do not trust each other's capital controls and fiscal policies and monetary policies. Isn't that the crux of the matter here?
It is to some extent, it is. We must first of all acknowledge that Africa is diverse and heterogeneous. And its setting there, it's much easier to trade within the REX, as you rightly said, for several reasons: cultural, historical, language, political realities within a particular setting. But across REX, there are quite a number of issues that could actually come to play. One, of course, these REX are different levels of regional integration. We know, for example, EAC is a bit more advanced relative to the rest of the 7 REX that are existing in Africa. Multiplicity of currencies, you have talked about it, that's very right. We have 33 currencies in Africa right now. I think some REX like EAC and ECOWAS have made progress to really advance towards monetary union. We are still seeing baby steps taken there. So perhaps this should call for Africa to have its own one currency. We have seen such claims. Of course, also there's variation in terms of the volume of trade. There's big brother syndrome. The countries like South Africa, Nigeria, these are big players. They would also probably want their currencies to be dominant relative to the other countries. So these are some of the issues that actually would require some deep thoughts. Language, we know, for example, Francophone, Lusophone, Anglophone. These are some of the barriers that really get into the way in which these REX could work together. We know, for example, ECOWAS and EAC, if you go down to Lusophone Central Africa, there are quite a lot of challenges there. And of course, politics gets in the way in the manner in which REX can operate more smoothly. Even when CFTA was being negotiated, we know there was a bit of resistance. If you read CFTA agreement, there's a key principle which really tried to recognize the role of REX in sort of spearheading the effort that CFTA tries to achieve. So REX have a lot to play, but there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed across REX and within REX that to ensure that we are able to really achieve this target.
It is going to be interesting seeing if politicians are actually willing to make the trade-off between single currency versus giving up their monetary policy control. But we'll leave that for that debate for another time. One last question for you, though. PAPS, this Pan-African payment settlement system that Bank is trying to push really hard. How effective, though, can it really be in lowering transactional costs across the continent at a time when you have some economies that have really aggressive capital controls in place? Ethiopia and Nigeria come to mind.
Well, I think if done right, it has a huge potential to really address some of the challenges we are facing right now. For example, PAPS can actually address exposure to exchange rate volatilities and scarcity of foreign exchanges. We know, for example, what is happening now in the global north with America tightening monetary policies that are affecting our country. So you see, we are being exposed to exchange rate control volatilities that actually make us very, very, very vulnerable. And secondly, I think PAPS can help minimize trading risks and increase financial integration in Africa. This is very crucial if our people need to trade effectively and take advantage of the CFTA. And finally, I think it can stimulate expansion, diversification, and development of African trade. This is very crucial if CFTA is to really achieve its target. Yes, I agree with you, Rama, that we still have issues with how capital accounts are managed within the continent, but we are seeing progress. We are seeing changes happening. First of all, many countries have ratified CFTA, including Nigeria and Ethiopia. We have seen recently Ethiopia has started to lessen its control. Telecom now is in Kenya. Kenya Safaricom is actually a player in Ethiopia. So you see changes are happening and countries are realizing that time has come to lessen some of these restrictions to make this CFTA work.
All right, then we'll leave it there for the time being. Anthony Mveyange, development economist and public policy expert, joining us there from Nairobi.